Welcome to the deep dive. We're jumping into a source, pulling out the key insights, so you get the shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're looking squarely at one chapter, 2 Kings, chapter 15.
Right. And this chapter, it really throws you right into a period of, well, intense upheaval. We're talking about both the southern kingdom, Judah, and the northern kingdom, Israel. You get these reigns of multiple kings,
Okay.
often marked by violence, instability, and you start seeing the shadow of, big empires like Assyria looming. It's quite a packed chapter.
Yeah, sounds intense. So our mission then is to kind of navigate this, figure out the key events for each king, see the really dramatic differences between the two kingdoms at this time, and maybe pull out some patterns, some lessons.
Exactly. Let's dive in.
Okay, let's start down south with the kingdom of Judah. Things there seem, well, compared to the north anyway,
Yeah.
considerably more stable, though, not without their own serious issues. We kick off with King Azariah, who's also called Uzziah.
That's right, yeah. Two names for the same king. And his reign is notably long for this era. He becomes king in Jerusalem at just 16. This is happening around the 27th year of Jeroboam's rule up in Israel. And Azariah, or Uzziah, he reigns for, get this, 52 years.
52 years, wow. Okay, hold that number in your head because, like you said, the contrast later with Israel is something else. And the source, it gives him a pretty strong thumbs up initially, right? It says he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his father Amaziah had done.
Mm-hmm. That usually points to, following the main covenant laws, supporting worship in Jerusalem. Sounds like a good start.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Almost always. The text immediately adds this critical point. The high places, however, were not removed. The people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there.
High places. Okay, that phrase pops up all the time in Kings and Chronicles.
Yeah.
What exactly are we talking about here? Why is the text so focused on this, even for kings who are otherwise seen as good?
That's a really key question. So these high places, they were essentially local worship spots. Shrines, often on hills, like the name suggests, scattered across the land. Now, sometimes they might have been used for worshiping the Lord, but the big problem was they often got mixed up with other Canaanite religious practices, or they just represented worship outside the main temple in Jerusalem.
Ah, so it's about centralization of worship.
Exactly. The perspective in Kings really emphasizes that worship should be centered at the Jerusalem temple. So even if a king was doing well otherwise, not removing these high places meant he wasn't fully getting rid of potentially unauthorized or, syncretistic practices. It was this persistent issue.
Got it. So a good rating, but with this major asterisk. And the source seems to connect this period, or maybe something specific the king did, with a really severe consequence. It says, the Lord afflicted the king with leprosy until the day he died.
Right. Leprosy, or perhaps a better translation, is a serious skin disease based on the Hebrew word. The text links it directly to the Lord's action. Elsewhere in Chronicles, it's linked specifically to Uzziah trying to burn incense in the temple himself, which was a priestly duty, not a kingly one.
Okay, interesting.
But whatever the precise trigger, the result was this king, with this incredibly long reign, ends up isolated. He had to live in a separate house, basically quarantined.
So he couldn't rule directly anymore.
Pretty much. This physical isolation meant he couldn't really manage the kingdom day to day, so his son Jotham had to step up. The text says Jotham was in charge of the palace and governed the people, while his father was still alive but, incapacitated.
Right, a sort of co-regency this.
Practical, very practical. Jotham gets hands-on ruling experience. And the text mentions, again, that these details are in the Book of the Annals of the Kings of Judah, pointing to their source material. Eventually, Azariah dies. He's buried in Jerusalem, the city of David, and Jotham officially takes over.
Okay, so that brings us to Jotham's reign. He becomes king in the second year of Pekah, who's ruling Israel. Jotham's 25, reigns 16 years in Jerusalem. Mother's name? Jerusha.
And his evaluation, it sounds very familiar. He did what was right in the eyes of unbelievable the Lord, just as his father Uzziah had done. It even uses the other name, Uzziah, there, linking them.
But here we go again.
Yep. The high places, however, were not removed. Same issue. The people kept sacrificing there.
It just wouldn't go away, huh?
Seems like it was deeply embedded in the culture. But Jotham is credited with something positive related to the temple. He rebuilt the upper gate of the temple of the Lord. So work on the central sanctuary continued.
Okay, but now things start to get a bit more complicated externally for Judah, right? The text mentions something new happening.
Yes, this is important. It says, parenthetically almost, in those days the Lord began to send Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, against Judah.
Rezin, king of Aram. That's like Syria,
Mhm.
Damascus area.
Exactly. And Pekah, son of Remaliah, well, spoiler alert, he's the king of Israel we'll talk about soon. So during Jotham's time, Judah starts facing pressure from both its northern neighbors, Aram and Israel, kind of ganging up on them.
Okay, so the geopolitical situation is heating up.
Definitely. It sets the stage for conflicts that really escalate later. Jotham eventually dies, is buried, succeeded by his son Ahaz, and again, his deeds are in the annals.
So wrapping up Judah for this chapter, two kings, Azariah and Jotham, almost 70 years between them. Pretty stable succession.
Right. Both get a generally positive review, did right, but both struggle with that persistent high places issue. Azariah's reign is super long but ends in isolation due to illness. Jotham's sees the start of serious foreign threats.
It shows, I guess, that even doing right didn't mean smooth sailing. You still had major internal challenges like the leprosy and growing external dangers.
Absolutely. It's a complex picture, even in the more stable kingdom.
Okay, strap in. If Judah was, relatively stable, the northern kingdom, Israel, in this chapter, it's the complete opposite. Just total instability, rapid-fire kings, violence.
Wow. It really is a night and day contrast. While Judah has two kings covering decades, Israel churns through five kings in roughly the same period. And spoilers again, most of them don't die peacefully.
Five kings. Okay, let's
Yeah.
start with the first one in Israel mentioned here, Zechariah.
Right. He takes the throne in Samaria. This is in the 38th year of Azariah's reign down in Judah. And Zechariah lasts, wait for it, 6 months.
6.
Months. That's it. That's it. And his evaluation, it's the standard negative one for the North. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord as his fathers had done. Specifically, it calls out that he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, which he had caused Israel to commit.
Okay, the sins of Jeroboam, that's the other recurring phrase, specifically for the north. Remind us quickly what was the core issue there.
Good to clarify. So Jeroboam was the very first king of the northern kingdom after the split from Judah. He was worried his people would go back to Jerusalem to worship at the temple and, maybe defect back to the southern king. So he set up rival worship centers, one in Dan, one in Bethel, put golden calves there, and even appointed his own non-Levitical priests. It was seen as state-sponsored idolatry, a fundamental break from commanded worship.
Right, a political move with huge religious consequences.
Exactly. And for the writers of Kings, any northern king who kept those golden calves going, who didn't dismantle that system, was automatically doing evil. It's like the original sin of the northern kingdom.
So Zechariah, in his brief 6 months, kept that tradition going. And his end, not peaceful, I'm guessing.
Not at all. Shallum, son of Jabesh, conspired against Zechariah. He attacked him in front of the people, assassinated him, and succeeded him as king. Public assassination. Overthrown violently.
And the text points out something specific here, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About prophecy.
Yes, it explicitly connects this event to an earlier prophecy. It says, "This fulfilled the word of the Lord spoken to Jehu. Your descendants will sit on the throne of Israel to the 4th generation." Jehu had been promised 4 generations for his dynasty. Zechariah was the 4th generation after Jehu, so his death marked the exact end of that promised line. The text is highlighting divine orchestration, even in the chaos.
Wow. Prophecy fulfilled, Jehu's dynasty ends. So who's next? This Shallum guy who just killed Zechariah.
Right, Shallum, son of Jabesh. He becomes king in the 39th year of Uzziah down in Judah. How long does he last?
Uh-oh. If Zechariah got 6 months, I'm guessing less.
You guess right, 1 month.
1 month, seriously.
1 month, from 6 months down to 1 month.
What does that even signify? A kingdom where the ruler can be knocked off after just weeks?
It tells you everything about the political disintegration, right?
Yeah.
There's no stable power base. It's just raw ambition, factionalism, violence. Whoever can muster enough force for a coup takes over for a minute. It's pure chaos.
So Shallum's 1 month ends violently.
Predictably. Then Menahem, son of Gadi, went from Tirzah up to Samaria. He attacked Shallum, son of Jabesh, in Samaria, assassinated him, and succeeded him as king. Boom. Another assassination, another short-lived reign.
Okay, so Menahem takes over. Also in that 39th year of Azariah. He actually lasts a bit longer, right? 10 years?
10 years, yeah, compared to the last 2, that feels like an eternity. But don't get too excited about his moral evaluation.
Let me guess. He did evil.
In the eyes of the Lord. During his entire reign, he did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. Same old story, spiritually speaking.
But his reign is marked by some pretty significant events. There's that
Yeah.
horrific act of brutality.
Oh, yeah. The text mentions he attacked a town called Tifsa because they wouldn't surrender to him, and it says he sacked Tifsa and ripped open all the pregnant women.
Ugh, that's just
Yeah.
brutal. Why include such a graphic detail?
It's shocking. It underscores the sheer ruthlessness, the terror tactics being used. It paints a picture of the moral decay that went along with the political instability. Just raw, violent power.
Chilling. And Menahem's reign also sees the first direct intervention from Assyria.
Yes, a major development. The text says, Then Pul, king of Assyria, invaded the land. Now, historians usually identify Pul with Tiglath-Pileser III, a really powerful and expansionist Assyrian king.
And Menahem doesn't fight him?
No, he buys him off, pays him 1,000 talents of silver to gain his support and strengthen his own hold on the kingdom. Basically, paying protection money to the regional superpower.
1,000 talents of silver. That sounds like a lot.
It was an absolutely enormous sum. A talent was a huge unit of weight, maybe 75 pounds, so 1,000 of those. Immense wealth.
Where did he get it?
He squeezed it out of his own people. The text says Menahem exacted this money from Israel. Every wealthy man had to contribute 50 shekels of silver. So, a heavy tax, specifically targeting the rich to pay off the Assyrians and basically keep himself on the throne.
So Israel becomes a vassal state, paying tribute.
Pretty much. He bought himself some time in Assyrian backing, but at the cost of national sovereignty and burdening his own people. Interestingly, though, the text says Menahem rested with his fathers, which usually implies he died naturally.
Huh. An exception in this chapter for Israel.
A rare exception. 10 years, a natural death, but achieved through brutality and bowing to Assyria. His son, Pekahiah, succeeds him.
Okay, Pekahiah takes the throne in the 50th year of Azariah down south. How long does he last?
Back to the short reigns, 2 years.
And the evaluation. Still bad.
Still bad. Pekahiah did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam. The pattern is relentless.
And his end, let me guess, assassination.
You got it. And this time, it's an inside job. One of his chief officers, Pekah, son of Remaliah, conspired against him. This Pekah takes 50 men from Gilead, goes into the citadel, the very heart of the royal palace in Samaria, and assassinates Pekahiah right there. Then Pekah takes the throne.
Pekah, son of Remaliah. We heard his name earlier, menacing Judah during Jotham's reign. Now he's king of Israel. How long does he manage?
He gets a longer run. 20 years. Starting in the 52nd year of Azariah.
20 years. Okay, comparable to Menahem. But the spiritual verdict?
No change. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat.
And under Pekah, that Assyrian threat that Menahem paid off, it comes back, doesn't it? And it's worse this time.
Much worse. This is a devastating blow. The text says, In the time of Pekah, king of Israel, Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and took. And then it lists a whole string of cities and regions. Ajan, Abel, Beth-Makkah, Genoa, Kadesh, Hazor. Crucially, it says he took Gilead and Galilee, including all the land of Naphtali, and deported the people to Assyria.
Deported them. So not just conquering the land, but removing the Israelite population.
Yeah. Exactly. This was standard Assyrian imperial policy. They'd conquer a region, forcibly remove large chunks of the native population, and often resettle the area with people from other parts of their empire. It broke resistance, destroyed national identity. For Israel, losing Gilead, east of the Jordan, and Galilee and Naphtali, major northern territories, this was catastrophic. A huge chunk of the kingdom gone, its people exiled.
Wow. So the kingdom is literally shrinking, crumbling under Assyrian pressure.
It's the beginning of the end for the northern kingdom, really. This isn't the final fall of Samaria yet, but it's a massive blow.
It feels like all that internal chaos and, from the text's view, spiritual failure is just making them completely vulnerable to this external power. And Pekah's end. After 20 years.
Back to the pattern, violent. Then Hoshea, son of Elah, conspired against Pekah, son of Remaliah. He attacked and assassinated him, and then succeeded him as king. Another coup, another assassination. Hoshea will be the last king of Israel, but that's a story for another chapter.
Unbelievable. Let's just quickly recap Israel in this chapter. Zechariah, 6 months, killed. Shallum, 1 month, killed. Menahem, 10 years. Natural death, but brutal, and paid Assyria off. Pekahiah, 2 years, killed in the palace. Pekah, 20 years, lost huge territory and population to Assyria, then killed.
It's just this relentless cycle, instability, violence, assassinations, and this growing, crushing pressure from Assyria that the internally weak kingdom just cannot withstand.
The contrast with Judah's 2 longer reigns, even with their own problems, is just stark.
Absolutely. While Judah had the persistent high places issue and Azarai's illness and faced growing threats, the leadership succession itself was stable. Power passed from father to son. Israel was just tearing itself apart.
So, synthesizing this, what are the big takeaways? The text seems relentlessly focused on the moral evaluation, right? Did right versus did evil.
Definitely. That moral framework, sins of Jeroboam, high places, shapes the whole narrative. It suggests consequences flow from these choices. And you see how Israel's internal instability, which the text links to that spiritual failure, directly opens the door for Assyria. First tribute, then annexation and deportation.
And the specific details, Azariah's leprosy, the palace assassination of Pekahiah, Menahem's brutality, the forced payment to Pul, the deportations,
Yeah.
they make it very concrete, don't they?
They make the history tangible, yeah. It's not just abstract failure, it has real, often brutal consequences. And the constant refrain about the annals of the kings reminds you this is presented as historical summary, drawing on records.
Okay, so why should we, sitting here today, care about these ancient kings and their messy reigns?
Yeah.
What's the so what for us?
Well, I think it's a timeless look at power dynamics, isn't it? You see the consequences of leadership choices, both personal and national. You see the impact of internal division versus stability when facing external pressures. It really highlights how political and, in this text's view, spiritual health are intertwined and how vulnerable societies become when those foundations crack. It makes you think about what makes any group, any society, resilient.
Yeah, that connection between internal cohesion and external resilience really comes through. Okay, so we've journeyed through 2 Kings 15. We saw Judah's longer, somewhat stable reigns under Azariah and Jotham, but marked by the leprosy and the high places issue and facing new threats. And then we saw Israel's whirlwind of violence: Zechariah, Shallum, Menahem, Pekahiah, Pekah assassinated, overthrown, paying off Assyria, losing land and people, just starkly different paths in this period. So here's a final thought to chew on as you reflect on all this. Looking at that huge difference in stability, Judah's enduring despite flaws, Israel collapsing into chaos, what does this chapter suggest are maybe the most critical internal ingredients for a society or any leadership structure, really, to hold together under pressure, both from within and without?
That's a great question to reflect on. History often holds those kinds of lessons.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Hope you'll keep exploring these themes